With the launch of Edge of Fate, every single class received one brand new exotic, and in this one we're going to be going over the Warlocks. When this exotic was first shown off, it got received as a little lackluster, and while I will say it probably isn't the most fun exotic to use, you actually can do some crazy things with it. When trying to build around this, I went a couple different routes, but ultimately this is what I landed on. And if you remember a couple seasons ago with Polaris Lance being able to ignite everything, this is what this build is going to do. You can basically sit back at a comfortable range, just pluck away with Polaris Lance, and while you're doing that, you're going to be spawning shrapnel everywhere, not only from your exotic but also from your weapon as well. All of that will lead to ignitions that you can chain over and over again, and I will explain how all of that works in this video. If you're trying to do harder content in the game currently, this build is a great go-to because you're going to get constant ignition damage while not really even taking that much damage because you're at such a safe distance. But with all that being said, thank you for clicking on the video. If you do enjoy, consider doing all the normal YouTube stuff, and let's jump right into it. All right, first things first, let's take a look at the brand new exotic, the Eunoia. This has the exotic perk Consul's Pitch. Hellion projectiles deal increased damage the further they travel, eventually fracturing into scorching shrapnel. So if we take a look here, as you see, if we are at a further range, you will start releasing these shrapnel projectiles outside of your Hellion. They do have some tracking, but it can be a little tedious at times, but no, they will eventually just hit enemies at some point. As you see, you can kind of just stand here, let your Hellion just do damage, you're spreading Scorch everywhere, and you can chain ignitions. Now the other benefit is that the Hellion actually will get more damage the further it is away. So for right up on top of the enemy, we're doing like 217, and then if you go around 40 meters, which is where the Hellion drops off at, you will go up to 249. So it's about a 15% damage increase, and honestly, it's not the main part of it. The main part is the shrapnel that's coming out and the fact that it can also apply Scorch. And you can kind of already see what we're going for here, just as a little teaser with just the two enemies. So let's take a further look into that. And to do so, we need to take a look at our subclass and talk about all the stuff going on behind the scenes. First off, let's just cover the basics. We are going to be running Hellion, obviously, so we can take advantage of the exotic. I also like to run Touch of Flame with a healing grenade just for pure survivability reasons. If you want to run Icarus Dash or even Heat Rises, you could totally do so. Your other fragment really is up to you. For your melee, I run Celestial Fire just because it has a ranged attack. You can proc Scorch. On top of that, you can proc some armor mods just at a range, which is nice. And then I like to run a healing with this because I'm going to be sitting in this a lot, just back with my scout rifle, just constant healing. It's going to be really hard to kill you. If you want to run Phoenix Dive, you totally can. It's completely up to you. You could even run Empowering Rift if that's something you like. And then for super, it's also kind of up to you. I just run Song of Flame, but if you want to run something like Well, you can. Just anything will work. But looking at the fragments, because this is where it gets crazy with this, first off, we're going to be running Ember of Ashes, so you apply more Scorch stack to targets. This just means now your Hellion can apply more Scorch stacks, which will lead to ignitions. Now, for your ignitions, we are going to be running Ember of Eruption, so your ignitions have increased area of effect. So this is just going to make all the ignitions be able to hit more targets, but that's really going to come into play with our next fragment, and that is Ember of Char. So your solar ignition spreads Scorch to affected targets. So if you're sitting here scorching a target over and over again with Hellion, that means they're going to have a bigger radius now, but on top of that, when this ignition goes off, it is going to basically spread Scorch. And since your shrapnel is also spreading Scorch, you can cause these ignitions for enemies that you're not even looking at. As you see, we're getting ignites kind of everywhere right here, and I'm literally standing still, not doing anything. Now, before we talk more about that, we do need to go over the last fragment really quick, and that is just going to be Ember of Singeing. So whenever we scorch a target, it's going to grant us class ability regen. Since our exotic is obviously playing heavy into class ability, we want to be able to spam it a lot. Now, for specific stat points, if you are running a Healing Rift, I would definitely recommend trying to get to 100 class ability because you will be able to loop this. Hellion does have a 20-second timer, but if you see here, we can basically just get it back before the Hellion runs out. We'll speed up the clip a little bit here just so you can see it. So as you see, we have 2 seconds left on Hellion, and we get our Healing Rift back. Now, if you are going to run Phoenix Dive, you can actually run around 30 class ability is the break point to be able to just get another one back before your Hellion ends. It's totally up to you. Again, I just like running Healing Rift because of the weapons with this build. But that's a good segue, so we can actually start talking about some of the weapons. Now, there's only really one that matters, kind of 1.5, but that is that you want to run Polaris Lance. Polaris Lance is going to be very strong with this build. You can basically just keep shooting over and over again, constantly reloading the gun, constantly applying Scorch, and that Scorch obviously will play back into things like Ember of Ashes and just lead to more ignites because of Hellion also shooting the same target. It is also very beneficial to run something like a choke lip weapon because this is going to take advantage of one of our artifact perks, but it is not needed, so that's why I kind of set 1.5. So if you don't want to run this, you don't have to. Just make sure you have a weapon that can apply Scorch. You could potentially even use the new perk that came with this expansion. I can't remember the name off the top of my head, but I have it in my vault. Burning Ambition here, which can apply Scorch if you don't have something like Polaris Lance, but I think Polaris Lance is going to work a lot better with this build because of artifact perks. And then speaking of that, let's actually jump into what is going to make this very, very strong. So our first artifact perk is going to be Fever and Chill. So whenever we get rapid precision hits with solar weapons, it will grant us Radiant. This is great because now with Polaris Lance, since we are just going to constantly reload the weapon every time we shoot, we can shoot 4 shots and we have Radiant now. This is going to be very good because this will play into other things, mainly being Radiant Shrapnel. So dealing the same weapon damage while Radiant or defeating a Scorch combatant with a weapon causes the target to release solar projectiles that deal damage and Scorch on impact. So this Scorch that happens is the exact same Scorch that comes out from your exotic armor, but you don't actually have to use the exotic armor. So as you see, we are Radiant right now, so if we shoot, we're going to get a little Scorch thing to come out, and you could just keep doing this over and over and over again. So if you're Radiant, constantly shooting, you're constantly making even more shrapnel. Pair it with your exotic armor that could also make shrapnel, and this is what this can look like. So if we come over here, we can take a look. We kind of have some enemies in the corner. I'm just going to shoot this guy. Hopefully they don't get backed up too much, but we can start just chaining ignitions over and over again because of that increased radius, because of the shrapnel kind of going everywhere. And this is, again, just with 2 enemies, you can kind of already see how gross it is. So imagine it's something that's, you know, a lot more enemy packed, you're going to be able to chain these like crazy. Now for other artifact perks that can help out is just things like Cauterized Darkness. So stasis and strain debuff non-boss combatants take increased solar damage from all sources. That's where I was talking about. If you want to run something like Chill Clip, you could just shoot any enemy except bosses. It doesn't work on bosses, so I can't really show it off on Car right here, but you will get increased damage with your Hellion, which is nice. Also your Polaris Lance too, because it's just solar damage. And then for the other little artifact perks, you have things like Elemental Daze. So whenever you stun a champion, you can cause an elemental line explosion, rapid precision rifling, and shoulder to shoulder, because you're kind of just using a scout rifle, you're sitting back, you're going to get some damage reduction. On top of that, you know, you can get some reload speed and flinch resistance, which is okay. It's no reason to not take it. And then even things like Shield Crush, so whenever you're Radiant, you will get some grenade cooldown and grenade damage. So if you want to run a damaging grenade, you totally can, but the grenade cooldown is more than enough for me just to run something like a healing grenade, because you can spam, you know, your Rift alongside your healing grenade. You're pretty much unkillable with this, and you could just cause explosions everywhere. So just kind of as a quick recap, you basically just want to sit back, put your Rift down, get your Hellion, just start shooting your scout rifle to get Radiant. You're going to start spawning shrapnel with your weapon alongside your Hellion, and that is just going to lead to constant chaining ignitions over and over again. In lower end content, you can't take advantage of this as much because the goal of this is to chain ignitions, so you're not really going to get those ignitions. But even in that lower tier content, things like your Eunoia can actually just kind of one-shot most of the ads, so you can even take this into lower content if you would like to, but it does really shine in more in-game content that is slower paced, because you just want to sit back and just build these stacks up over and over. I know this is probably not the most fun or interesting playstyle to some people, but it is very effective if you are just trying to get a clear. Obviously you're not going to be getting a speed run or anything, but I definitely think this exotic has a lot more potential than what everyone first thought out about it, because of the artifact pairings and all the synergies that you can provide with it, and I hope that kind of showed it off. But now let's actually take a further look at the stats, and like I said, I'm going to be running 100 class just so I can get my healing rift back as fast as possible. Pair that with Ember of Singeing. Your Hellion basically is never going to have a cooldown. You can have it up at all times. I also like to run 100 super just to get my super back as much as possible, and then alongside that I just run 100 grenade just so I can also get my grenade back as fast as possible. You're not really doing damage with the grenade, so you don't need to go over 100. You just want the cooldown. Same thing with your super. You're kind of just using your super for survivability, and you could also spam your class ability more because you will get increased cooldown with Song of Flame. But again, you can kind of just run whatever super you want to. If you want to play into weapons, since we are running Polaris Lance, you could totally do that. Unfortunately, I just don't have any armor that can do that quite yet with this stat distribution. But in a perfect world, I'll probably go with 100 class, 100 grenade, maybe 100 weapons, and then take super off. And I also just kind of opt in to throw some last stuff in health, just again because the whole point of the build is just being very tanky and kind of just letting the chains do everything for you. Now for the armor mods, this is what I'm running if you like to copy them down, but as a closer look, I do like to run a harmonic siphon so I can make orbs without Polaris Lance. You're not going to be picking orbs up too much with this build since you're just kind of sitting back, but it's nice to have them. Also just run double dynamo so I can just get some super energy whenever I pop my class ability. There really isn't anything else here too much worth taking, because you're not gonna be able to take advantage of things like asset assets because you're not actually getting grenade kills. So just getting the double super energy from your Rift is nice, but just know they do have diminishing returns, so if you want to try to take something else, you totally can. Now next up is just going to be harmonic loaders, so I can increase your load speed of Polaris Lance. In all honesty, you don't need this because you constantly reload the gun over and over again. So if you want to take something else, just like a double impact induction or a double focusy strike, you can totally do that. But this just makes it so whenever you do melee damage, you will get some class ability and grenade cooldown. Your melee is just more of a tool to get your abilities back, because again, your melee will apply Scorch. So pairing that with focusy strike, you can basically just throw your melee out, get a bunch of class ability energy back, which is great. Now for your chest piece, always go with resistant mods. Just swap these out for whatever content that you are going into. And then for our boots, I do like to run a Orbs Restoration, Installation, Absolution. All of these are just going to get your class ability back as fast as possible. So if you ever pick an orb up with Installation, you get class ability. With Absolution, you get every ability. And then with Orbs of Restoration, you get ability for your lowest energy. And then finally for our class item, I do like to run a Proximity Ward. So if I go for a finisher, I will get a powerful Overshield, a powerful Attraction, so I can pick up all the orbs around me when I use my class ability. Since we're spamming this a lot, you might as well take this. And to help spam the class ability, I'm also going to be taking Utility Kickstart. So whenever you use our class ability, we will get energy back, and this is based off of the amount of armor charge stats you have. So if you do have a bunch of armor charge from orbs that your teammates making or the Harmonic Siphon, you can spam your Healing Rift even more, which is very, very good. And then for the final part of the build, this is the Transmog I am running. Again, I took advantage of the Ablaze shader. I just absolutely love this thing. I didn't really have a theme going on here for. I just kind of tried to make something look good with the exotic armor, but I did take advantage of the new Vex head ornament, which looks pretty cool with the changing colors. So if you want to make your Warlock look like this, definitely be sure to copy it down. But anyway, that is going to do it all for this build. Let me know what you all think about in the comments below. I know this is 2 solar builds back to back. I promise we're going to move on to some other stuff here pretty soon. So again, if you'd like to see that, be sure to stick around. Also, if you want a different solar build, be sure to go check out my Starfire Protocol build. It is very, very good, especially now that you can get 200 discipline. Your grenades can just do a ton of damage. But my final thoughts on Eunoia is that I think it is better than what I originally thought it was going to be, but I think it could still drastically use for some tracking buffs. Every now and then, sometimes it seems like the exotic will track like it's supposed to, and then sometimes the projectiles just don't do anything. I think if they were to add just a smidge more tracking, it's going to take this already pretty decent build and actually make it very, very strong. But even as it is right now, I think it's still pretty solid, but you can probably achieve something similar if you do run a different exotic. But obviously, since it is a new exotic, I want to try to put a build together for you all. With that being said, I still think I would give it a shot, and if you're going to do that, I wish you all the best of luck with putting this build together for yourself. I want to thank you all so much for watching, and I hope you all have a great day. Hope you've been having a ton of fun with Edge of Fate. Peace.